programs. Welcome, everyone. So we have Kevin and Adam here, and they're going to walk us through Asset-Map and Holistiplan, respectively, today. You know, we really got together originally as our companies because we really have some kind of like-minded software, and Kevin and Adam really have a similar story in how kind of they've evolved in the industry, and we're really excited to talk to everyone about it today. I can't wait to hear what these guys are going to walk us through, and welcome everyone who's joined us. We still have some folks getting logged in. The session will be recorded today, just so everyone knows, and everyone's muted just so we have a great recording experience here, but we love to get questions. So I can't say that enough. If you would like to see more of something, you have a question specifically for Adam or Kevin, please type it into the questions and answers box, chat box. I'll be monitoring that as we go on today, and these guys will be happy to go ahead and address them throughout the session, and certainly at the end. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adam to get things kicked off.
Well, thank you, Allison. And just the audio check. Can you hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, welcome, Kevin. And of course, welcome everybody else who's attended this program. This is exciting. We've been talking to Kevin from the early days of learning about their wins at the XYPN, and also, just getting named such an emerging technology partner for financial advisors. So it was really interesting in many ways. I was curious myself as a recovering financial planner myself as to what you've solved. Of course, now that I'm pretty much out of the practice, personally delivering financial advice, and of course, what I would have loved to use. So thank you for developing what you've developed. I'm excited for people to see it if they haven't so far.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Adam. It's great to join you. Excited about what you're building at Asset-Map too. So yeah, really looking forward to showing folks how they can be a lot more efficient and still get the technical things they need to get done in their practice.
Yeah, very important. I know for both of us, obviously coming from the field, we understand, I think, a lot of what happens with the challenges of delivering financial advice today in the field, especially now that it's pretty much almost entirely remote. For some of us, it has been for some period of time, but having to add value to customers continuously is a real challenge. It's not just about can I give you performance or allocation or fees or planning or what's my bundle of process today. It's time for us to start expanding to what I tend to think of as true holistic planning, which is to focus on not just the investments, not just the insurance, but also the legal and the tax implications for the decisions that we're making, because they all work together. And if we're being ignorant about any one of those areas, we're probably not serving our clients the best way that we can. So I thought what we would do is we're going to do actually speed demos of both programs, so that for those of you that don't know either one of us, you'll understand where we're coming from. And of course, you'll see whether this fits or doesn't fit in your practice, or somebody who it does, who needs to hear it if you're an end consumer. So let's take some time to do that. I'm going to just jump over to Asset-Map. We're not going to actually spend time in PowerPoint today. We figure the user base that's here are pretty more astute. They kind of know what the space is doing, what's happening. For us at Asset-Map, the big challenge that we've been trying to solve is how do we help a client make better decisions financially in all four of those categories that I talked about: legal, tax, insurance, and investments. And it came down to a process that all of us are using currently, which is we pretty much all do fact finding, right? So, of course, let me see if I have this right. Of course, I picked the wrong household. I'm going to look for a certain household. One of the things that I wanted to do in my practice is that I wanted the ability to go right into a household right away and understand what was going on in their life in literally seconds. And so what Asset-Map has the capacity to do, am I sharing my screen okay? Can you see that, Kevin?
Yeah, looks great.
Fantastic. Is to understand not only what instruments these people have that I'm managing, but also can I understand who's involved in the household and what are other topics that I need to be cognizant of. In this case, you can see this is John and Holly Smith. They're in their 40s. They have a daughter, Jessica, who's 7 years old. They have a business partner and they own a company. And so they're going to already have lots of complexity and things that I need to bring up and address that maybe they wouldn't have thought of if I'm just managing their assets, or I'm placing their insurance, or maybe doing annuities, whatever it might be. For those of us that came from the product side and moved into financial planning, we were very cognizant of the actual instruments we're responsible for managing. And so they tend to take center stage when we talk to our clients about, well, how are we doing? We talk about what we manage. But the reality is their lives are much, much broader. They just haven't had a way to look at them or explain them in many ways. So the asset map is literally an amalgamation of the balance sheet of instruments. What do I actually own? Net liabilities, assets minus liabilities. What are my cash flows coming into each of these people? And then lastly, what are our insurances? And of course, the people and entities that make up my household. So what you're looking at literally is an entire mashup of that information all on one page, brought up to its most common information. What is it? Where is it? Okay, so what is it? It's an IRA. Where is it? In this case, it's at, where is it? Here's a SEP IRA. It's at the local bank. It's worth $15,000, if you can see that. It's a SEP, it's qualified. You can see it's red. That means for me it's qualified. And who owns it? Holly. Everything can be broken down into that structure, and we've been testing that for years, so that I can look at this and I reasonably know what that is. And I know what this 529 is. And I know what this universal life cash value in Holly's name is actually tied to this policy. And so the idea is literally I'm aware of what's going on in the client's life instantly. What's interesting about looking at the life this way is you can see what I'm starting to do with my pen, which is embedded in Asset-Map, is the ability to start saying, gosh, this life insurance looks light relative to their income, or boy, we really don't have a lot of savings in retirement, do we? Boy, we've got a really big position in a business that's illiquid, and there's also exposures there from legal, tax, and gosh, insurance, all kinds of issues here. So for each of us who's in the interpretation business of what people have done, the point is that this creates a framework that is now shareable with the advisors on this case, and in some cases the client, so that we can all have an honest conversation about what's on the map and what's intentional. All right, so that's the first thing about what we're doing. And of course, we could look at different layers of this household. Maybe I just want to look at the primary with the spouse. Maybe I want to add a child and look at it as a household. Or maybe I just want to look at, in this example, the business and the company side by side to talk about some things I know and don't know. Now, you might notice that there are a bunch of these boxes that we call stencil boxes. These are effectively placeholders because I don't see them on the map, but I would typically expect to see them on the map. One of the things that we realized many years ago is that sometimes we need to have conversations with people that they don't necessarily want to have or wouldn't have thought to bring up. So we created this concept called stenciling, which will drop placeholders on a map based upon their demographics, or if you want to custom build them, to overlay ideas and conversations that they need to have. For example, I think they mentioned to me they have a student loan. I put it there as a stencil. And we can build this literally in seconds. So you can overlay conversations you might want to have by literally just jumping to our stencils builder and then having conversations around, in this case, let's say college savings or retirements or life insurance or property casualty or business policies, overlay them on a person and then instantly just have that conversation. This is really, really different, I think, in the context of creating conversations. All of these boxes or containers are fully clickable, editable. The key for our game is really about speed. Can I collect this information and build this live with a client right with them? Some of you might be wondering, well, how do I integrate or connect some of these tools with other tools? There's 3 ways to get data. I just showed you one of them, which is that advisors build these interactively with clients in a screen share. And something interesting happens where the client actually owns it and takes, well, no, that's wrong. Let me tell you that value, or let me go look that up. And they start revealing more and more information because they want their map to be accurate. We found there's actually, there's 2 other ways that have been really popular lately. If they're a prospect and they've never been in Asset-Map, I can actually send them a link that they can go start doing right away. And every advisor has a set link. So if I wanted to send Kevin an invitation to do this now, I can literally start a discovery by offering him. I sent this to his email and he gets a link, and this is what it says. Hey, welcome, Kevin. Will you take 15 minutes and do our online fact finder? And it'll walk him through it, and I'll get an asset map. Okay, so that's an incredibly fast way to accelerate this process for prospects that are not already in Asset-Map. We really don't have any data on them to integrate. All right, we're actually running over 5,000 new households a month right through that process. So it's, if you're wondering, well, do people actually do it? They do. They actually do it because they can do it on their phone. And for security reasons, it closes out in a certain number of days. But we've been really thoughtful to that. The other way that people get data into Asset-Map is they use our integrations. And we've got integrations with a whole bunch of companies. They're not actually all registered here because some of them push to us. We don't control that. Companies like Money Guide Pro can push to Asset-Map. A whole bunch of CRMs and companies like Riskalyze. We can actually overlay their data on top of our system as well. So some really interesting use case scenarios where we're actually looking at layers of data on top of it. Orion can actually overlay performance on top of Asset-Map. So some really interesting things coming that you'd be interested in. The last thing I'll show you before I hand it over to Kevin is one of the questions we've had for clients of us for a long time is, hey, you know what? I do financial planning elsewhere, or I use another platform. Can you just build financial planning into this so I don't have to move the data? So we did. Several years ago, we built a concept called target mapping, which in 30 seconds will have the ability to run your preset templates of how you approach these topics, like loss of life or retirement or education funding. And it'll pre-populate your entire financial plan in 30 seconds so that all you got to do is go back and edit it. We're clearly focused on speed and thinness of presentation. I want a 2-page presentation, not a 40-page presentation. And if I can do that in literally seconds versus hours, it'll give me more time to spend time on how the solution might look. For an example, this happens to be something I was working on earlier. It's a retirement plan. It says that effectively, based upon what they want, they're only a certain amount funded for retirement. And I want to track this continuously every time we get together. So any changes in Asset-Map are going to affect all of their planning, even if they're in the midst of retirement or any of these scenarios. I tend to think that most clients want to know how much money they need to save, what kind of returns they need to hit, because this is the conversation that we are always debating. This is what you need to do, Mr. and Mrs. Client. This is what I need to do, figure out how to get this aggregate return up. And as a result, that's how we're going to achieve these goals long term and make sure we don't outlive our money if we're talking about retirement. So if you're wondering if Asset-Map has fully baked goal-based or cash flow planning in it, the answer is yes. We built both, and we literally allow you to do that in 1 or 2 pages versus more pages. Plenty of other features in here I kind of encourage you to explore. We're going to actually spend some time with Q&A at the end, but I hope that you start to see how this gets used, typically in the front end where advice starts, data collection, fact finding, and then visualization to figure out where you're going to take the conversation. We have embedded financial planning if you need it, or we integrate with other tools, as I told you about. But it's really used at the annual review the most and that early onboarding engagement process. Now, with that, I think a great segue for this would be one of the challenges that we've had and we've never really been able to address is answering that big question around tax and are people put in the right position for tax. As a financial planner, I was high level, I can explain how taxes work and arguments and so forth work. I also file a tax return myself for a lot of entities, so I have native understanding. But in terms of analyzing a client really quickly, I think this is where we complement each other really well. So with that, Kevin, I'd love to give you the presenter role and let you know that we're gonna hold all questions to the end, everybody, because we know there are people on time schedules where we want to make sure we maximize our time. So we're gonna hold all our questions till the end, if that's okay.
Great. And yeah, as you give me presentation abilities, Adam, I just wanted to say I've seen this now a few times and I continue to be impressed with the approach that you're taking. It's a similar approach to what we're doing with Holistiplan. It's consistent. We're doing it, being consistent in what we're trying to deliver to advisors, which is a faster way to deliver value to the client without having to enter a whole bunch of data too, which is, yeah. So let me show my screen now and hide that. So Adam, are you able to see the Holistiplan dashboard?
I see, yes, I see your screen. I'm just maximizing it for my view. Great.
Okay, great. So this is the Holistiplan dashboard, clients down the left. A little bit about Holistiplan first though. I'm an advisor. I'm still recovering, I guess, compared to Adam, because I still do have a small RIA where I serve a handful of clients, but I was part of a larger RIA for about 10 years. My co-founder and partner, Roger Pine, the same. He was based in Texas. I'm based in Northern Virginia. But we identified this need, what we've been talking about already, too much data entry, too long to be able to review one client's tax situation from beginning to end, and then execute on planning opportunities. So we developed Holistiplan to really try to make tax planning far more scalable, far more efficient, so that you never have to decide, even within your client base, who's going to get tax planning and who's not, because I only have time to do it for a certain number of my clients. No reason to think that way anymore. You can do tax planning for all your clients, and all your clients deserve tax planning, and even the ones you think might not require it or value it. Typically, if you're going to review, if you give yourself a chance to review that tax return, you're going to find something, even if it's not something that's going to reduce this year's tax liability. Maybe it's something that helps you realize you should be doing something on the investment side differently. Maybe you should realize long-term capital gains this year because of their income this year. So lots of opportunities across a holistic financial planning process. Taxes are intertwined throughout all of that. So that's really the reason we created Holistiplan, so that advisors can do it for everybody. So with that background, I'm going to show you how it works. I've got households here. You see we've got some columns, AGI, marginal bracket, carry forward losses. Those are populated for clients where I've uploaded a return. In the case of Bob and Phyllis Vance of Vance Refrigeration, if you're Office fans, it's NA. We haven't uploaded a return yet. I don't have a tax return listed here. So I'm going to walk you through how you do that and how fast you can start doing tax planning for your clients. I click on Upload Return. I'm going to select what year I have. In this case, I have a 2019 return. Click on Next. Just choose the file I want to upload. That's going to open up my document storage. I click on the file I want to upload. It's a PDF document of prior year's tax return. And then I'm going to click on Upload. That pop-up goes away. And now what's happening, Holistiplan is reading that entire tax return. 40 pages, 80 pages, 200 pages, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's estimated payment slips in there and a CPA cover letter. We will find the data we want to find in order to do some really good tax planning to deliver a client deliverable for you. You can see it's already done. So in about 20 seconds or so, I didn't even be able to explain what's all happening behind the scenes. But now I have a client deliverable ready for me and a pre-populated scenario analysis screen that's going to allow me to really quickly do some projections for this year based on the 2019 data in this case. So you can see the AGI and marginal bracket were populated for me along with carry forward losses. There were none in this case. I'm going to go look at my tax report. So I click on tax report. My logo, that's my RIA logo up at the top. It would be yours in your case. Client name there at the top. And now we just dive into some key figures. Some coming from the tax return itself, but would take a little while for us to find manually. Some that aren't even on the tax return, but are tremendously helpful data points to have conversations with your client. Things like, again, what bracket are they in, but what average rate did they pay last year as well, which is oftentimes a very different and much lower number, and a number that clients oftentimes are surprised by. So we do some calculations in these key figures. We show some other data points from the tax return that are helpful, that even if you didn't scroll down for the rest of the report and you were already pretty savvy at tax planning, just this key figure section gives you a real quick look at what your client's tax situation is. And then as I scroll down, we show what bracket they're in for both ordinary income and long-term capital gains. Over to the right, biggest time saver by far, modified adjusted gross income, MAGI, a number we have to know from a planning perspective because so many contribution limits, additional taxes like net investment income tax, deductibility of certain expenses, credits, they're all based on MAGI. MAGI is not a number that's on the tax return anywhere. You won't find it. You got to calculate it yourself if you're not using a Holistiplan. And then you got to compare those calculations because there's not just one. There are multiple MAGI numbers for every taxpayer because the formulas are different depending on what planning opportunity or credit we're talking about, unfortunately. But we've done all that math. We let you and the client know whether they're over, under, or in any one of these various phase outs, again, in a matter of seconds. We show, again, Medicare Part B, D premiums. That's not a tax. Those are premiums that could increase because of your MAGI, though. So we show if you need to be concerned about that for your client and how close you are potentially to the next tier up and making your client pay more in premiums. And then we show Schedule A, B, and D sections as well. And then we get into the analytical part of the report. So we didn't just find data and summarize it for you. We actually analyzed that data and ran the tax return through a tax return review checklist that identifies potential planning opportunities, or at minimum, really good talking points so that you can have a meaningful tax planning conversation with your client or prospect, right? This is great for prospecting as well, being able to show a prospect what tax planning really means in your business and what they can expect from a deliverable standpoint. So you can see these are going to be different for every tax return that's uploaded. You know, in this case, there's potential Roth conversion opportunities. There's identification that a lot of the dividend income was coming from non-qualified dividends. Deductibility of mortgage interest. There's some CARES Act things in here for 2020. So lots of potential observations. You can customize those. You can hide those if you're not interested in having that conversation with the client, or you already did and that you already know they're not going to do it. You can edit the individual observations as well if you want to tweak the wording or expand on it a little bit. And then we also at the bottom have state tax hints as well. So these are all 50 states, really, really helpful for advisors that are working with any out-of-state clients. I know as an advisor in Virginia, I knew Virginia and Maryland state taxes reasonably well. I knew what the 529 contribution deductions were, for example, or whether or not IRA distributions, Social Security was taxable or not at the state level. I certainly don't know that information for the other 48 states. But using Holistiplan, now I can quickly identify, all right, what do I need to know about the individual state tax situation as well? And are there any potential things I want to consider or need to consider in what I'm doing for the client? Your disclaimer would be down at the bottom as well. So you just upload your logo and disclaimer when you log in for the first time, and then you're done with that. That'll appear on every report going forward. So that's the report. I mentioned though that we also pre-populate a scenario analysis screen, and this is the part where if you weren't impressed already with the speed and the fact that you haven't had to enter any data yet, I think as I go over to the scenario analysis screen now for Bob and Phyllis Vance, you'll see how efficient we've made now forward-looking projections as well. Because as I go to the scenario analysis, I see all of the 2019 data pre-populated for me in column 1. Instead of having to now take that tax return and in order to do forward-looking projections, have to enter a whole bunch of data into Excel or something else, I now can just copy over from scenario 1, change the year to 2021. I could change the header here as well if I'd like. And now I'm ready to do some forward-looking projections off of the 2019 data. So, you know, maybe I'll make changes for COLA adjustments to Social Security, for example. Maybe I want to do a scenario where we're not doing as much IRA, or maybe at all doing any IRA distributions. Maybe I want to see a different approach to maybe portfolio distributions. I can do any kind of modeling I want in here. Maybe it's life changes, like filing status changes. Maybe it's going from wages to business. Any types of life changes as well, you can model in scenario analysis, but you're at least starting from a point of all the data already being in there and you potentially just having to change a few of the numbers. Maybe you want to look at Roth conversions, for example, particularly now that I've gotten rid of a pretty hefty income stream in this year. Historically, what you'd have to do is a bunch of trial and error. You know, I'll start with 10,000 Roth conversion, maybe go to 20, maybe it's 30, and then you're trying to figure out what's the ideal number. We've streamlined that for you too with Solve for Max and Range Calc. So Solve for Max is going to quickly pop up just one number for you. That's the number that you can add to an ordinary income and long-term capital gains before the client pays a higher effective rate on the next dollar of income. So the whole, you know, how much can I add in their current marginal effective rate bracket right now? That's the number. But I might want to dig in a little bit more. I'll go to Range Calc, a new window appears, and now I'm able to see a graph that's explaining to me what's driving the increase in the marginal rate and how big that increase is. So the 0 point I see I'm at 12.9% federal rate in total for this scenario. As I go across to the right, I see a big jump occurs though, all the way up to 29%. Even though I'm still in the 12% ordinary bracket. It's because capital gains are now being taxed at 15% instead of 0 once I cross over that 12,500 threshold. So if it's net investment income tax, I see that. I see phase outs of medical expense deductions, AMT, QBI, credits that get phased out. This graph can get really, really colorful depending on the tax situation, but you're going to be able to quickly see and show your client how sophisticated, first of all, the tax system is, and all the different things you need to be aware of and are aware of with your client and making decisions, not just about their tax situation, but maybe it's about their investment portfolio or their insurance products, things like that. So we've got that for ordinary income and the same thing for long-term capital gains. And armed with that information, I could go back to the scenario analysis screen now, and I could plug in some new numbers. You know, maybe I want to now do a $12,000 Roth conversion. Maybe I want to show that scenario, but I want to show another scenario where we don't do a Roth conversion, and instead I'll delete out that Roth conversion. Maybe we want to just realize long-term capital gains instead, and do 12,000 of that and rebalance the portfolio. I can scroll down again, make any changes, Schedule 1 changes, Schedule A, QBI, other taxes like self-employment. Again, very flexible model, but not requiring a whole bunch of data entry. So I think we're really hitting the sweet spot in what advisors need. I can show what the total tax bill then is with those various scenarios. I can see all of the MAGI phase outs and breakpoints for any scenario that I built. So I can make sure, you know, especially if I'm adding income, or maybe my target is to get under a phase out, I can reduce income up above in a scenario, and I can see that I'm having the impact that I want to have in that scenario. But this is a great check to make sure you're not doing something you'd otherwise not want to do. But again, either doing this manually would be tremendously hard and time consuming. And then we've got a withholding calculator as well. You can also build that tax report that I showed you earlier for any scenario that you've built as well. So you can really show that tax report and show the impact of your planning strategies for your client. You can build as many scenarios as you want as well. You can clear up space by just moving over to the scenario bank and moving back and forth. So you can build as many scenarios. You can do multi-year projections as well, all the way out to 2025. So Adam, I think we wanted to leave a good 25, 30 minutes for questions.
Perfect.
Happy to start that process. And
yeah, let's do it. I see a bunch of these questions. Let's stay in Holistiplan for a second here, because okay, your screen is already up. I'll ask you these questions that came up in the order they were received. Does Holistiplan have a sample tax return that we could upload to our dashboard so we can show clients a sample? I think it would be helpful to show prospects a 60-second clip of how this works.
So great point about the 60-second clip. We are working on videos, well, and we have a 2-minute demo video on our homepage that shows how it works and the upload process and what's delivered in the tax report, and then and a quick view of this scenario analysis screen as well. As far as a sample tax report, we actually use presidential candidates for a lot of demos and things like that. So I'd encourage you to Elizabeth Warren, for example, always posts her tax return to her website. Joe Biden just recently published his tax return. You could download that and upload it to Holistiplan and see
Wow,
a report for Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren.
interesting. No other politicians? Now, this is a good question though, but how many complicated schedules can you handle? Right, for some of us working with very high-end clients, they're going to have, you know, schedules C, E, D, and B, and you know, they're going to have a bunch of K1 stuff. Are you able to handle that, or where is there a point where you're saying this is, don't do it?
Yeah, so Schedule C, Schedule E, we read in. So 95% of what you're gonna come across as a planner, again, unless you're dealing with ultra high net worth folks that might have tons of complexity,
Mm-hmm.
so we're talking presidential candidates. Trump's tax return might be tough, might be tough to run that whole thing through. You could still run it through. What we're going to be able to find in all of the nuances of a tax return that complicated would be
Mm-hmm.
limited to what we're reading in. But we're reading in 1040 schedules 1 through 5, A, B, C, D, E, forms like 8606, 8959, 8960. I could go on and on. But
Mm-hmm.
best bet is to upload the entire tax return. You can do modeling at the business income level, again, because we're reading that stuff in. You can tweak, if you're in the scenario analysis, you can tweak Schedule C income, Schedule E income, self-employment. So it can definitely handle most of what most financial planners are doing today.
That's awesome. A couple other questions that came in. How do you do the tax chart from Clifford? How did you do that tax chart? You showed actually a graphical representation. Can you just walk us through that again?
Yeah, sure. So let me go to range calc again.
So you're in your scenarios and you're clicking range count.
Yep. So you're in a scenario now, so you can, before you've built one or as you're building, so for example, I'll just click on range calc again for this one where I had the $12,000 Roth conversion.
Mm-hmm.
If you recall the one I showed you earlier, we had about $12,000 of room before we had that cliff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now let me click on range calc and show we've only got about $500 left before we hit that cliff. And now I see, yep, I've come right up to that cliff. So right now I'm still at the 0 point. I'm still at the 12% bracket, but I'm about to hit that spike. So I'm not sure if the question's asking how did we build it or how do you get there. If it's the how do you get there, it's just clicking on that green range calc button that's in the
I think that
scenario
was
analysis.
that was it. Is there a sample tax letter from Louise? I think I'm reading that right, Louise.
A sample tax, so a sample tax report. Yes, actually both. So we can send a sample tax report that would look similar to this Bob and Phyllis Vance one right here, right there. So we could send you like what the PDF version of that looks like for sure. Just reach out to info@holistiplan.com. You said tax letter, so I wanted to clarify one thing. One thing I didn't show in this demo for time is we've also built a feature for our premium plans that is a tax letter. The tax letter is a tax prep letter that would go to your clients or your client's CPA at the beginning of the next year that lists out all the things you've done from a planning perspective. And I'll go to households and show that here real quick, since the question might have come up.
That's what I think it is.
So down here, I can create a tax letter for every client, clicking this customize button where I can check boxes for all the things I did throughout the year that is going to have a tax impact. Maybe it's a QCD that's not going to show up on the 1099-R, for example. You need to communicate that outside of the documentation to the CPA or to the client. You can track all that throughout the year or do it all at once at the beginning of the year in January. and then produce this tax letter that you can send to the CPA or the client that lists out all the things that were done in the previous year so that the tax prep process goes well the first time. One of the things that we've learned and heard from advisors and experienced ourselves as advisors is all the great planning we can do in, let's say 2020 goes for naught if it doesn't get reported on the actual tax return. So QCDs or charitable contributions or 529 contributions or HSA contributions, all these things we help our clients with. If that communication doesn't get over to the CPA, then they're not going to get credit for it from a tax standpoint, and in essence it didn't happen. So that's why we built this tax prep letter to help seal that communication between the advisor and the CPA or the client.
That's interesting. We did something similar with our notes function, which I'll show if we have time. Let me ask you 3 more technical questions that came in. I'll blast them out to you. Kevin, does Holistiplan help with W-4 adjustments?
It can. So in the scenario analysis, it can at a high level. We don't have a W-4 calculator per se, but down at the bottom, the withholding calculator that we've built, you're able to, let's say it's October and you're doing some scenarios and you're going to potentially increase, you're going to do a Roth conversion and you're going to increase the client's tax liability for that year. You can plug in all of what they've withheld year to date from all the various income streams right here. And then we calculate for you the difference between what they're going to owe, because we've got the total tax liability right here of the scenario that you've built. You've plugged in what they've withheld year to date. This number is going to show the difference that they still have to withhold it. And then you can turn that into a change in the W-4.
Got it. So got it. So there are effective ways to have the conversation, perhaps. Can you read returns with K-1 income? And do you also take in state tax returns for analysis?
We do not analyze the state tax return. You can certainly, oftentimes they're part of the same PDF, still upload the whole thing, but we're not analyzing the specific state tax return for that client. We've reverted right now to providing those state tax hints just at a broader scale. And then the first part of that question was
K-1s.
K-1s. Yeah, so the K-1s are going to flow into a Schedule E or multiple Schedule E's. We're reading in Schedule E. So you'll have where that income stream came from, the name of the investment or the business or the rental property as it's listed on the Schedule E, which came through the K-1 in the case of investments or other businesses.
Got it. Okay, so one other technical question for you, which is, does the PDF have to be text components, or can it be a scan, like an image scan? Like, can I take a photograph of a tax return, or do I have to have the actual native PDF?
So ideally, you have the native PDF that's never been printed and then rescanned. You can, if you have a hard copy though, you can scan it and upload it, and it'll work. It'll work a little differently than what I showed you. We have a support team where if our technology isn't 100% certain all the data was read in correctly, and that's typically going to happen when we're dealing with scanned in documents, then we have a team of humans that are making sure all the data is correct. And sometimes we even have to enter that. Sometimes the scans are absolutely horrendous. Sometimes they're handwritten returns that we're able to process. And even those handwritten returns, we've got to enter a whole bunch of the data, if not all of the data. But we do that, and then we release the report. That means you'll get emails then when that type of stuff occurs, and alerts in the system, basically alerting you that the report's not going to be ready in 20 seconds like I showed you on this demo. It's going to maybe take 30 minutes or an hour for us to.
That's still amazing. That's really amazing. Okay, fantastic. So there's a couple questions that hit both of us before if I show Asset-Map again.
Yeah, let me see.
What's that?
Let me stop showing my screen so that you can show.
Yeah, sure. We'll go to needs. Let's go to this environment. So we're just making it up as we go along, right?
Yeah.
We're just being real, authentic people. Well, we got to answer some questions. There was one question here that I flagged for those of you that are using both softwares or contemplating using both platforms. What's the best way to show a deliverable for tax planning? Now, my answer for that would be the good thing about Asset-Map is that it's designed so that you can make a thin or a robust presentation, depending upon how many reports you want to include, with each page being its own report. So every page that we ever generate is a tear sheet. So the whole thing could come unbundled and you can reorganize it however you want. Or you just want to use this one page, it should stand alone. And that was on purpose because that's what I found myself doing is I would pull this page and say, okay, I'm presenting this page. The reason that's important is because very often I found in the tax discussion, if you literally just have an asset map as a reference guide for all the instruments they currently have and the people, and then you basically append that with the holistic plan presentation, it's almost like a cover page. So you could use the asset map as a reference diagram, especially if you're even sending a tax letter, I find, where here's your asset, here's where all our stuff is, professionals or client, and then here's the analysis on the tax side that I need you to pay attention to, or bubbled up the highest value things. We all know that most of us don't have time to read past page 2, let alone paragraph 1. So the key is, can you create it obvious that this is a resource to me, I know what it means, and then go right to the information you want. Hopefully, Kevin, do you have any additional thoughts about that?
No, I agree. I would view it as, you're going to show an asset map, that one pager that just provides a great picture of everything together. And then to the extent that you want to dive a little deeper, particularly on the tax planning piece or what observations or planning opportunities there are, then you're just sliding the Holistiplan report, which, by the way, can, if you hide and customize it, because it's completely customizable, you can hide entire sections if you want. You could boil the tax report from Holistiplan down to one page too.
Got it. There's a couple questions here around asset map. I know that I've actually answered some of them right in text. So if you did answer the question, with a question about what do you do for annual reviews if they're already in asset map, can you send out our discovery link? The answer is no, that would be a security breach. What I would recommend you do is, because our discovery doesn't require a password to get in, and that's the comment I was making before. So the point is that we actually, before a client meeting or a week in advance of the client meeting, we'll send the asset map in the current form that we know it, which is typically a combination of what we manage, which is up to date, and what they've told us over time, which is out of date. We'll send that asset map to them and say, hey, listen, we're going to use this in our meeting. If you see anything glaring, please let us know so we don't waste time in our meeting. And we tend to get pretty good follow through with that. People appreciate getting their physical map, so it frames the conversation they're going to have in a week, and they'll remember all the questions they planned on bringing. So that's a good best practice. I know that Kevin mentioned that he was building videos out, and there are samples available. I thought that was a great idea, using a public person's return. I guess you could always use your own return to try to play with this, and that's probably typically what most people do when they first get Holistiplan. And there's been other questions about e-money and other financial planning tools, especially in conjunction with Asset-Map, and I'm sure, Kevin, you might have some thoughts about it. You've already figured out that a good number of advisors tend to ask us whether we integrate with existing data sources. Both of us have integrations with the two most popular CRMs, Redtail and Wealthbox, for those of you that are wondering. Different functions. For us, we pull in household information and data, and we link back to the original source of record so that you can jump between the two platforms pretty seamlessly. With respect to planning, financial planning with Asset-Map as a complement or a competitor to these platforms, it's a great question. Recently, the T3 survey, which was the advisor survey that ranks all of us in terms of what's their user rating, we actually won this year, we would say, in user rating. We had the highest user rating for financial planning tools, including some of our friends at eMoney, Money Guide, and all those companies. But I think it's because we're also doing something a little different. There's a high complementary value of Asset-Map and, let's say, an eMoney is a great platform. when we ask our crossover users who are using both, how are they using it, whether they integrate it or not? And there is a way to integrate it, by the way. You can integrate eMoney and Asset-Map through Precise FP in a two-way integration, works really well. So that's a data aggregator that aggregates a lot of different platforms. The reason I say that is because they'll use eMoney for the back office financial planning and the vaulting, and then they'll use Asset-Map for that client engagement layer when they're talking in the meeting. So they're gonna, let's Fisher Price this whole eMoney down to a drawing. That's an effective way. If you're using Money Guide, another popular platform, Money Guide has the ability to push to Asset-Map, so you can pre-populate a map for your annual review meetings if you keep Money Guide up to date. So those are some answers. I just answered 5 questions in one. I don't think that we're an obvious competitor to the financial planning tools, because we're not trying to create a massive, thorough financial plan. We're trying to create speed of engagement, an X-ray, and literally a temperature check to determine whether you need triage or you need surgery. Very often advisors find they can actually get by very well with simply an X-ray machine and a thermometer. You'd be surprised what most advisors can do. So that's the best answer I can give you. Kevin, any other thoughts about that topic?
Well, I would surprise as it relates to Asset-Map. I think you nailed it, and my sense is we're starting to. I think advisors are starting to move away from spending a lot of time doing 30, 40 year projections and showing a big book of what either cash flow or what a portfolio is going to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now. We know that it's wrong as soon as you print it, type of thing, right? We just know it. The one thing we know about it is that it's wrong. It's not going to end up that way. So I think Asset-Map is doing a great job of boiling it all down and giving it a presentation of what really matters and what matters today. As it relates to Holistiplan, we're complementary to all of those as well. We're tactical planning software where we're not doing any of that modeling. We're not telling you if you're going to achieve your goals or how much you can spend in retirement, things like that. We're tactical, meaning what can I do from a tax standpoint or in an investment portfolio standpoint this year or next year or the year after to optimize that financial plan that you've built in Asset-Map.
Yeah, that's very good. And I think it's interesting. I think we wind up being both strategic and tactical in the sense that a current view of what you're doing today has to be questioned. A current view of your tax return has to be questioned. Is this optimal? Are there ways that we can add value? Is it even worth the time to try to optimize this stuff? These are all good questions for us to answer as financial advocates for our clients. Both of these products can be white labeled for those of you that are using our products, so you can get your brand front and center. So that's important. In any printed reports, you actually don't see Asset-Map whatsoever, other than the fact that it's the report Asset-Map, and it's then your brand. There's a good number of people that are asking us about cost. And if you have any questions about integrations, you can certainly go to our website, check out our partners. There's the websites for both our companies. You probably answered 90% of your questions there. I recommend that if you're really interested or you want to explore this stuff, you should schedule a demo from our teams, and they'll walk you through this and see if it makes sense for you in your practice. That there could be scenarios, I can't think of any, where it wouldn't make sense in your practice, unless you're in maybe you're a tax account, maybe. But the reality is, I think these things have a lot of utility. What's your cost, Kevin? What's your retail published pricing cost, so that everybody can get a feel for what does it cost to get this thing?
Yeah, so we start as low as $449 for a year for an annual subscription. We base our pricing not on number of users or licenses. It's based on how much you're going to use the software in uploads, right? We showed you that most of the software is based on you upload a return and you get a deliverable. So that's how we price it. That $449 will get you up to 30 uploads in a 12-month period. So that's really for the solo advisor or the recently up and running advisor. And then the prices go up from there, $9.99, $18.99 a year. as you're using more and more uploads. And then the subscriptions above that $449 come with some of the premium features that I mentioned, like the tax prep letter. The $449 plan does not have that, for example.
Fantastic. I mean, this is the cost of, it's 2 hours of the cost of a tax accountant. So,
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
amazing price.
Oftentimes we'll occasionally hear from someone say, well, I don't have 30 clients, I only have 10 clients right now. But the amount of hours you would save in just doing it for 10 clients, the ROI on 449 is easy, very easy.
Just frankly, just if you kept it to yourself, you didn't show it to the client, I would look like a rock star. I might earn some stickiness in my clients' loyalty if I hadn't already. For the answer for Asset-Map retails for $129 a month for our Pro platform. That's an annual contract, but we tend to think monthly these days. So it's $129 if you're not part of an affiliation network that we already have an arrangement with, like a broker dealer specifically, or outlet. Just talk to my team; they'll tell you whether you qualify for additional savings. But retail $129 a month for if you include planning. If you don't want planning, it's $99 a month. That's for full integration and discovery, client profiling, stencils, etc., and integrations and exporting into Excel, which a lot of people like still, importing and exporting into Excel from Asset-Map. So those are the answers to your questions. We also have a delegate license, which basically means if you have a paraplanner or a staff member who does all your work or supports multiple advisors, it's only $29 a month for those people that have a whole team of people that do their work. So let's not make it difficult for you to get your staff their own licenses, so that from an audit perspective, we can backtrack and support this. I didn't really mention it too much, but one of the things that we've been really cognizant of, Kevin, is this whole building a back file or defense file against BIR and however it plays out. It's not really top of mind for a lot of people. We thought about it a lot in the DOL kind of era, where we basically have actually archived every single report ever generated from Asset-Map for the last 5 years in worm storage. So that if you ever needed any of this stuff because someone was coming after you, you have an attestation of who created what, when, and so forth. And that's why we really kind of challenge people, make sure you're not just sharing logins with people who can mess up stuff or not create a defensible file. We're going to be investing more in that this year. We're actually going to be announcing something at our Advice Tech Live conference, which we hope you attend on August 19th, where we're going to share a bunch of great new tech and innovations and ways to engage. But this is a really exciting year. I'm thankful, Kevin, that you've been willing to do this with us and for sharing your platform and building it in the first place. If you do have, you're solving a problem we all had. If you guys want to connect with any of us, please see the links on our screen. Sign up for a demo, get involved, find out how this fits, and certainly you can connect with both of us on LinkedIn if you want to connect or follow with us. Any other questions that are outstanding, we'll do that. We'll email you offline because we need to go. But thank you, Kevin, again. I appreciate everybody's time here.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It was great to join you. Thanks for hosting. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you. And thanks for being part of this community. Bye, everybody. Take care. Be safe. And we hope to see you at the next event, maybe in person one day.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin. Take care.
See you, Adam.
Bye, everyone.